Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to do my September wrap-up part 2 with
me. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm the husband, and I'm here to also talk about the books that I read this September.
Yeah, so I read 4, he read 3, so I'm gonna start and we'll just go back and forth. So, the first one that I read in the second half of September is Eartheater by Dolores Reyes, which, do you want to tell them what you just told me?
Well, my Latin and Spanish isn't exactly perfect, but Dolores Reyes would translate loosely from the Latin for, like, painful queens, which is just kind of an amazing Latin origin for a name.
It's also super relevant to the story. I don't know if it's a pen name, but if so, it's a greatly picked pen name.
If it's not, it's just a cool name regardless.
That is, yeah. So the book focuses around a young woman who is somewhere in her teenage years, and she realizes that if she consumes Earth, she can feel and see visions of what happened to the people that were living or touched that Earth. So sometimes it's a place where someone died, sometimes the Earth could be from where they spent a lot of time, and it's often brought by loved ones who are looking for what happened to their family member or loved one who was murdered or went missing, and so on. So it's very interesting because the young woman is on the edge of poverty and she lives with her brother, and she's constantly having to battle, does she want to hurt herself and her own body by consuming the Earth, but more than that, take on the emotional toll of dealing with not only the visions of and the ghosts of the people who have passed away or are missing, and very often something bad is happening to them, but more devastating than even that is her having to interact with the loved ones who have someone missing. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it and recommend it if you're looking for a dark translation. I did also mention this in my 4 Argentine women in translation you need to check out. I will leave that video linked down below. For Shorty September, it checks off translated and set in another country, which is Argentina, as well as for the Magical Readathon by Book Roast, it completes my character creation for Heritage, which was an element word in the title, so Earth, so that I can become an Earthling.
Pretty dope.
So yeah, I'm really excited about that. All right, do you want to tell us yours?
So the next book, I have this in front of me, the next book that I read was Catching Teller Crow by Ambelin and Ezekiel Kwaymullina. Apologies on pronunciation, of course. So this one is one that obviously you might have heard about before. This tells the story of a young girl who died in a car accident and is now a ghost helping her father solve what appears to be an accidental death but turns into something much more interesting than that. This touches on a lot of really interesting issues in terms of First Nations Australian experiences, of Dreamtime, of stolen generation trauma, of contemporary state intervention trauma, and this touches on a lot of really fascinating issues. It's also just beautifully written, it's lyrical, it's poetic, it's really exciting and really funny sometimes, which was always a delight when I'd be reading it and then suddenly find myself laughing at something that somebody said, and it's like, oh yeah, it just breaks up the tension. I don't think I've ever read a book by a brother and sister duo before. This is the first one that I've ever read for that. So I gave this a 4 stars in the end. I thought that one of the characters who was relatively central to the story, I thought wasn't quite developed in the way that I wanted. I'm not going to tell any more than that because it kind of gets into some spoiler territory. But the overall impression was that it was a 4. It was excellent. I wish it was more. I also read this for the Magical Readathon. This was part of my character creation for my Heritage. It was to read a book with the crow on the cover. So this is the
Iltyrian.
I should remember that.
The like dark edgelord one.
Edgelord, yes, that's me. That's my personality. Wonderful. So I love this. I can strongly recommend you read it, and I read that for my Heritage.
Nice. And so the next one I read was Tequila Blue by Rolo Diez, who is an Argentinian author, but in his younger years he stood up against the military kind of state, and then he fled Argentina, lives in Mexico. So this book is actually set in Mexico, and it is following a dirty cop who is not only dirty at work, stealing money and helping like set people up unjustly for money, but also he is cheating on his family and he has a whole second family. I read this book because knowing the author's background, I thought it would be like satirical. I really do think it's supposed to be a critique of how corruption doesn't help any system, anyone in the system whatsoever. So basically the plot of this is that we're following Carlito, who I said is the dirty cop and the cheater, and he is investigating a murder of a gringo or like white filmmaker who was killed in like this seedy motel. Turns out the filmmaker was famous and protected locally because he made like really, what would you say, dark films?
Okay.
Like dark porn and snuff films.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, okay. I know that it's possibly satire and I know that we're supposed to hate the cop, but like, I just hated being in his head the whole time. Like, I don't like him. He could die. I don't like his boss. He could die. Like everyone we encounter through his lens, I'm like, I mean, you could die, and I wouldn't care. So like, no, well, it's true because everyone in this book is corrupt.
Yeah.
So it's just like unending corruption, which I think is the point. I know it's the point. But however, that plus the male gaze in here, the number of times he objectifies women, or like as a cop, he's talking to a widow and he's talking about how he's having a vision of how he wants to pin her down and like rape her until she cries. And I'm like, wow, I hate this book so much. So I ended up, yeah, it didn't go well.
No.
So I ended up giving this 2 stars, and despite, even if it is supposed to be a critique of the system, I really hated it and I don't recommend it. But this did, however, fulfill some Shorty September prompts. So translation, because it's from Spanish, murder mystery, because he is solving the murder throughout the book, and set in another country. It's set in Mexico. So it did fulfill some Shorty September prompts. However, I'd give it a pass.
So the next book that I read in the back half of this month was Brian Caswell's A Cage of Butterflies. This tells the story of a school for particularly gifted children, mostly teenagers who have substantially high IQs or special talents, but that's not really what it's about at all. It's in fact about the other part of the compound they're in, where there are 5 children, very young children, who all have developed, strangely, they're suspected to have autism, but then actually there's something else going on. It turns out that they have crazy brain mutations that allow them to be telepathic, amongst other things. And it's about the story of those children and the older teenagers in the school and how they work with that weird, corrupt school system they're in and try to escape. It is strange. I think that I thought that the story was quite compelling. I mean, it's a cool prompt, it's a cool story idea. And some of the story beats along the way were also really interesting. I thought that the characters of the children who were telepathic themselves were really interesting. Mm-hmm. I think that the way that they were described and the way that they grew as the story went captured a lot of that really, some of the strange ways that somebody who had the kinds of brain mutations as described in the book might behave in that world. I thought that was really interesting. But ultimately, I think the story was let down a lot by some pretty amateur writing. I thought that it veered between cardboard characters and cliches, or just not really describing things in a way that was interesting. I think some of the characters bled together because it had a number of different perspective characters, but I found it sometimes hard to distinguish between their voices or their ways of interacting with the world. So ultimately, I would give this a generous 3 stars.
I think it's interesting because I also gave it 3 stars for poor character development. However, show them all of the awards it's won. So this is an Australian book that they teach at school a lot, and each one of these here is an award that it's won in Australia. So this is a very like famous and well-known, well-loved book, and we're both kind of like, I mean, it's okay.
It's also
before.
it's a little bit dated. I mean, at this point, the book is 20 or 25 years old or something like that. So some of the language at times was also a bit dated, especially around talking about things like neurodivergence or disability. There was some cool disability rep. I like that. But ultimately, 3 stars. I read this book for my character creation for the Magical Readathon. So this was the dark academia setting, and it certainly fills that prompt. So this is for the Dark Meadow background of the giant underground library. Would have been cooler in a giant underground library, but here we are.
Yes.
Everything would have been cooler in a dark underground library.
Yes.
Anyway, that's all that.
We both are now part of Dark Meadow, which is awesome. So the next thing that I read was 80 Days by A.C. Esguerra, who is a non-binary author, and this came out September 7th. So this is a graphic novel which has a very, I think, beautiful art style. It's a lot of curved lines and undefined background, if you like that kind of thing. And it's kind of set in a pseudo World War II setting, and we're following a pilot who is pretty gruff and kind of doesn't say a lot, but then he stumbles upon a thief who he rescues, and the thief becomes his radio navigator. The thief pays off the debt to the pilot, they go separate ways, but then their lives are entangled because the pilot knew the thief, and the thief is like a wanted criminal, etc. The main reason why I'm giving this a 2.5 is because the plot and the character development was just really confusing, and the word choice is very abrupt and like stop-start. It's very stuttery. So it's like very sharp, I would say incomplete sentences. And they don't develop well the background of the thief or the pilot. You're not given intros into any new like setting. It just felt like it needed someone to come in and maybe help the story be a little more fleshed out. Because then when things happen to the characters, I didn't really care. And honestly, continuing on to finish it was a bit of a struggle. And I wouldn't have if it wasn't a graphic novel that could be read quickly. If it was an actual book, which was 300 pages, I would have put it down. So for that reason, I unfortunately don't recommend this, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to it. I mean, like, queer pilot and thief, pseudo World War II with beautiful art. There's a lot of potential there, but I just don't think it reached.
That's such a shame, because I was really excited about this one.
I know. Yeah. But unfortunately, it is what it is. So, pick us up. The next one we read was
pick us up. The next one we read. So I read The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I understand that this is a fairly well-known book on BookTube. I'm not really on BookTube very much. I didn't know that, so I just read it. This is the story of a ragtag multi-species group on a spaceship who are flying to a new world to connect a new species into the intergalactic alliance, as it were, and the misadventures that they have along the way. I found, when I came to think about describing this book, I struggled a little bit to talk about why I liked it so much. I thought that the characters were interesting enough. I think the world building is what I really loved. I think the description of this galactic kind of hodgepodge cosmopolitan alliance and the tensions that go within that, as well as the ways that people within that try to work with each other, I found that was a really interesting exploration, and it was explored really well and really sensitively. Understanding that there's going to be cultural tension, friction, but a lot of good faith characters really trying to work it out together, and I thought that was really well explained. I thought that the differences between different kind of galactic species was really fascinating and really well explored. The representation of non-standard romance, of whether it be human, non-human, different types of alien species, aliens and AI, like polyamorous, all kinds of things on display, which was really fascinating from a reading standpoint, but it was always handled very sensitively and quite genuinely, which I guess was really compelling. And
you like character studies.
I do.
Yeah, so he likes character studies.
Yeah.
So I thought he would like this one.
I did. I enjoyed it very much. I'm halfway through the sequel now, and
You're halfway?
yeah, I'm halfway
You got
through.
it yesterday.
I know, but I read last night.
Oh, that's true. I was feeling very sorry and pitiful because I was hurting.
Yeah.
So I went to bed at like 6:30. So you just read the first this?
I just read the whole time.
Oh my gosh.
It took me a while to get into, but it was also I'm into it now, so you know.
Awesome.
We're 2 from 2.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. And then speaking of being pitiful and pregnant, the last book I read, and the reason I didn't read truly that many books, so I read 3 books in the second half, but the reason why I didn't like read more is because when I was reading them, I was also reading this, which is a parenting book. It's Simplicity Parenting by Payne. And this is just about how to minimize like the noise and the stress in a household. Like I've said, I've read a lot of parenting child psychology books in the last 10 months. I read them so he doesn't have to.
I read the good ones.
Yeah, so far there's only been 3 that I have recommended that he read, and this is the 3rd and final one. So yeah, I'm not going to say much more than that because this is not really my normal fare for everyone, but this is an excellent parenting book and I really do recommend it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Yeah, so it's my 2nd highest rated parenting book I've read so far. Yeah, and I'm excited to have finished it because that's the last parenting book I had on my list before Le Bébé comes. So someone did ask us if we know the sex of the baby, and we chose not to find out, so it will be a lovely surprise. My due date is November 5th. Are you pumped?
I am so excited. I am ready for this baby to come out.
I am ready for it to come out.
I'm sure you are more so.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, we've just been reading and...
It's been a great reading month, actually.
I've been equal parts reading and sleeping.
Yeah, well, you know, that's fine.
Yeah. But thank you so much for doing this with me.
It's my pleasure. Yeah.
And we are all set up for the Magical Readathon next year. So we completed Novice Path. He did 2, I did 3, and we each did 3 for our character creations. So next year...
Ready to go.
Yeah, we're ready. So yeah, without further ado, we will say bye for now. We're wishing you lots of love, happiness, just general good vibes. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you later. Bye!
Bye!